What's up, guys? Doug Polk here, and we're back for another episode of Poker Hands after a little bit of a hiatus to head over to Philadelphia for Poker Night in America. Today we're going to be looking at the biggest pot, I believe, from the weekend. It was a hand played between myself and Jeremy Kaufman. But before we jump into that, I want to quickly make a couple of announcements. First off, I want to announce we're going to have interviews with both Mike Dantali and Kate Hall. The Mike Dantali interview is going to be done as a live stream Thursday at 1 p.m. PST. You can stop by and check it out. Should be a lot of fun. And then later on, we will do a Kate Hall interview. Might not be live streamed, not 100% sure. I'll let you guys know when we interview Mike. Next up, my bankroll challenge is going to resume this Friday at 3 p.m. Pacific time. Now, we've not been playing it in a little bit, but we're back on it. Currently have over $1,000. Make sure to head over to dougpolk.tv, hit the follow button, and stop by and check it out on Friday. All right, with that out of the way, let's jump into the hand.
Doug Polk now with the pocket kings, but both of these players, if I had their hands, I would have done something other than just call.
Me too.
So now Doug Polk coming in as the initial raiser in this pot.
Doug, how do you like your
Straight.
lift?
He makes it 1,050.
And I can expect Hellmuth. I think Hellmuth's going to get a stack in too.
Kaufman with 9-10 of clubs calling. Now back over to Joe Kim with pocket eights, and you think that Hellmuth will be reshoved? Yeah, yeah, and there it is. He sticks it in.
Yeah, I thought that was going to happen. He's got about 4,000. It's 4,600. Yeah.
That's more than that.
Remember, we were talking in the beginning about kind of sadistically wanting to see Phil Hellmuth get in bad spots for him. So far, we've seen the King 4 all in pre-flop against the pocket kings of Sean Deeb, and now we see him putting it all in, and Doug Polk is just kind of Hollywooding right now, hoping to get Kaufman along. He's just going to call this shove here.
Yeah, he's doing this because he does want Kaufman to come behind and call. That's why he's not snap calling.
Well, and also because there may be a little tilt value here with Phil Hellmuth when
Right.
Doug takes his time to call. Doug makes the call. Kaufman!
Whoopsie.
Looks like he accidentally may
put in
have
12,000 by accident.
raised, but it looks like it's just going to stand as a call.
Our hand begins at 25.50 with a straddle and another straddle, as things can be here on Poker Night in America. Kim decides to limp in with pocket eights, and I'm not a big fan of this. When you have a hand as strong as pocket eights, you want to bump it up, and even though the stakes have now quadrupled, you have to still play your hands aggressively because eight is a lot better than what the field is likely to have. The action then folds to Phil Hellmuth in the small blind, who looks down at ace-queen off. In general, in this spot, you want to play ace-queen aggressively. You're a short stack, and you want to knock people out and try and take this pot down. If you do see a flop, it would be better to be up against maybe one opponent where your equity is a lot better. Phil decides to set the trap, though, and come in for the call. I don't hate this decision, particularly with aggressive players behind, because if someone does decide to raise the pot, you can just limply raise all in. In general, however, you should look to play good hands aggressively, so I primarily would like to see a raise. I look down at pocket kings, which are the second best hand in No Limit Hold'em, and so I'm pretty happy. I raised up to 1,050. My goal was really just to get some value, maybe get a heads-up pot, and hopefully Jeremy comes along for the ride. Bousquet folds, and now over to Jeremy, who looks down at a real serious hand, 10-9 suited, and he could decide to either 3-bet or call. I think I could see some merit for both options. If you call, you're in position, which is good. However, you might get limply raised, especially by Hellmuth, which makes it a bit worse. Also, if you 3-bet and I'm raising too much in the big blind, then you're going to isolate me and put me in some tough spots out of position. So I could see both plays having some merit. I might mix it up between the two. Kim now decides to get out of the way after Kaufman flats with pocket eights and absolutely have to call if you do decide to limp in. Eight is way too strong of a hand to limp fold, and the action's over to Hellmuth, who cannot wait to jam it in, quickly rips it in from behind for $5,000 with his ace-queen. Now back to me with pocket kings, and I've got a little bit of an interesting decision. If this jam was smaller, I would probably look to re-raise, so that if Jeremy wanted to come along, it would be pretty expensive. But the thing is, the jam is for around $5,000, so in this situation, if I call with kings, Jeremy might decide to come along as well with some hands that are a little bit loose. If that happens, I do allow him the chance to hit a flop that outflops me, but at the same time, I also let him flop draws or pairs or straight draw, flush draw type draws where he's going to be behind my hand, and so I could really see some logic either way. When I do call this jam, I'm probably going to be a little bit polarized between hands that can barely call the jam and traps like kings. If I had a hand like ace king or jacks, I probably would rejam to try and isolate Phil Hellmuth. Anyway, I eventually decide to call. Jeremy quickly comes in as well. A lot of pre-flop action here, and let's take a flop. By the way, Kaufman, playing with fire here, when you did call, he throws in 2 chips, and there are some chips out there. That is technically a raise. If I thought there was some angle shooting on, I would have called the floor. But me and my boy Jeremy, well, we've got a little history together.
I mean, like the fight, shouldn't I have like some odds there?
Ace, king, jack. Tug poke, middle set.
The flop comes ace. Oh, always an ace. Oh, and a king. Ace, king, jack. That works. Anyway, the flop does come ace, king, jack. And Jeremy has a gut shot straight draw, backdoor flush draw. Hellmuth has top pair and a gutter. And I'm working with middle set. Now the question is, should I bet or check? And in some traditional situations, you might want to be betting here to try and build a pot. The thing is, this is a weird spot because it's a dry side pot. If I bet and Jeremy folds, I'm going to be all in with Phil Hellmuth. So if I was bluffing, it would be a bad spot to do so. This made me feel a little better about checking to try and trap my opponent. He might overvalue a hand like an ace. He might maybe take a stab at it anyway to try and get heads up with Phil Hellmuth, or maybe not really think about it too much at all and just bet. If I do bet myself here, I knock my opponent out with a lot of different hands. And yeah, there are some pretty bad turns. A queen or a 10 is going to be difficult for me, but I'm still going to have a set. And so those hands aren't, I'm not totally dead against those hands. And then also there's some chance he just has random nothing that I want to have a chance to keep in the pot. So I decide to check. Jeremy decides to go ahead and check back, which is a pretty safe play here because it's a dry side pot, and we take a turn.
Checking to Kaufman.
I mean, I would think if it was me, I would have bet around 3,500.
I would have done the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Now, what Doug
Still wanna
Polk may
protect
be
your
thinking
hand.
is that Kaufman has been bluffy, but Kaufman has no incentive to bluff into a dry side pot when it's likely that Phil Hellmuth has his 10 high beat.
Right. And you're just giving this guy a free card for 15,000 if he spikes a queen. I don't think I check into that dry pot.
And now he bets huge.
The turn comes the 6 of spades, and now I've got to bet and try and build this pot. I was able to check the flop because we're playing something around 21,000 effective, and if I bet the turn, bet the river, we can still get all in, and maybe if my opponent has a hand like an ace or a jack, I can get some value. So I decided to bet 6,000, but again, this spot is weird. If you think about it, it doesn't really make that much sense for me to be bluffing here because if I bluff and he folds and Hellmuth is still in the pot, I'm going to have to beat Hellmuth. So maybe it could make some sense to bet with some hands that could be ahead of Hellmuth, but behind Kaufman. But in general, this spot is very strong for a player to bet because the pot is protected. Anyway, I decided to bet 6,000, and now Jeremy starts to think about it. Some people don't have the balls to make some moves, but some people definitely do.
In general,
Kaufman has 21K. I mean, you could just bet. You could bet 4,000, 35. You're still going to be able to have a shove on the river.
yeah, in general, for those of you watching, following along on the Twitch chat, when you have a dry side pot like that, oh my gosh, Kaufman went all in.
Kaufman went all in.
Kaufman went all in, and
What
Doug
is
Polk
going
called.
on here? Holy smokes.
I will say this, it makes more sense to jam over my bet as a bluff than it does to bet if I check, because at least now if I fold, you do secure the 6,000 that I've wagered, and you have some chance to beat Phil Hellmuth in the main pot. The problem is I'm going to have a bunch of good hands here. Now, the sick thing would have been if I had ace-queen and faced this jam, what would I do? I actually am not even sure. He might have gotten me to fold a hand like top pair because if he's bluffing, he's going to have to beat Phil Hellmuth. And can he really just make the move here with a $16,000 main pot to win $6,000 on the side? Seems kind of unlikely. But luckily for me, I had the goods, and now all I have to do is no queen, no 10.
Oh my gosh, Phil Hellmuth gets the bad news, and
Wow.
Doug Polk can't believe it. He's elated.
What a hand. Unbelievable. He checked that flop, and I guess that's what did it.
The river card's a 5. Doug Polk
Wow.
continuing to add to his
Wow.
stack here,
30.
dominating this Poker Night in America table. And
That's a $72,000 pot. I'll tell you one thing, Kane. There's action in this game. I mean, this is
That is going on, poker hands. This play was simply too aggressive from Jeremy. He should have just folded into the turn bet. If he wanted to make this move, a nice hand to do it with could be like 10-9 of spades, or maybe like queen-9 of spades if he decided to flat that pre-facing the raise, which would be totally okay. If you start to just jam gut shots, you're going to get way out of line, and this is a board I can absolutely smash as somebody that called a limp raise jam. I can definitely have aces, I can definitely have kings. I might have ace-jack, although I might lean towards betting that on the flop, so I certainly do have an array of hands that can call a jam, at least aces and kings. Also, it's kind of hard for me to be bluffing. What hand can I call the pre-flop jam with and now bluff? You know, maybe a hand like 9s or 10s that I want to get Jeremy off of like a king or a jack. That could be a good play to balance out your range, but overall, I'm going to have a lot of strong hands and not really that many candidates I'd be looking to bluff with. Also, afterwards, Jeremy was not a happy camper.
he's one of the best pros in the game at this point. You know, he's all over social media.
I'm sorry. All right.
He's one of the top pros in the game. You know, I don't understand why he checked that flop, but now, you know, $20,000 later, I'm saying maybe that was the play.
To be honest, though, I'm kind of glad you did that because I managed to get this picture, which is one of my favorite Phil Hellmuth pictures of all time, and probably one of my favorite ones of myself as well. Thank you for joining me here today for Poker Hands. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. I'll see you guys tomorrow for the Mike Tintali interview.